So dudes, when episode 4 of Valorant rolled out, a lot of people seemed a little bit upset and not particularly eager to play ranked anymore because of a so-called ranked crunch. I'm not going to go into the science and mathematics of how exactly the elo system in Valorant works. It's a run-of-the-mill elo system that you guys are probably familiar with from playing other competitive shooter games like CSGO and Rainbow Six Siege. The general premise of it is that you win more games, you rank up, you lose more games, you derank. What was a bit of a turnoff for a lot of people this episode was that they seemed to be in a rank that they don't necessarily feel like they deserve to be in. Some players anecdotally on Reddit complaining about going from diamond to silver, immortal to gold, pretty big discrepancies in terms of their, I guess you could say, assessment of their skill level. I wanted to be candid about my own experiences and share them with my audience. So if it's some of you guys who are down bad, can at least confide in the fact that I am also down bad. So when I first started seriously doing Valorant content, I was silver as fuck. My gunplay wasn't very good. I crouched too much. I still crouch too much. And I carried over a lot of habits from CSGO that weren't working. CSGO, for instance, has a bigger emphasis on learning spray patterns. Good enough knowledge of a spray pattern can allow a player to reliably hit tight groups from decent distances. In Valorant, spraying is actively discouraged. When compared side by side at least, the inclusion of the back and forth sort of motion when the gun gets past the first 7 shots is a deliberate mechanic put in the game to discourage holding down mouse 1 and still being able to get kills with it from far away. Also, compared to Rainbow Six Siege, where every gun is a laser beam, the way that you interact with the game becomes very different. Some people don't like the game being built this way, and it's perfectly understandable for them to pass on Valorant if it's not their cup of tea. Gunplay-related attributes to a game just take time and practice to learn, so I got more comfortable with the gunplay by doing these drills that you see me doing here. Smaller range of motion shots from the side to bigger range of motion at the face of the shooting range to distance shots at the back. I moved away from maining the Phantom as a result of getting more comfortable with the Vandal's one-tap, and I find myself liking it a lot more now that I'm used to it, even though I used to hate it. Over time, I went from silver to a push for gold 3, and I was excited to make a push for plat in episode 4. Then my placement matches went horribly. Some of them I didn't even play particularly bad. I just ended up losing, and I started silver 1, 1 rank away from bronze 3. No biggie, if I deserve the higher rank, then I'll just get out at the low elo eventually, I told myself. This immediately became a lot harder to do than I thought it would be. And the most frustrating part of it was that I didn't feel like I had regressed in my playing ability. Watching some of my clips from the How to Play Every Agent video I uploaded in the spring of last year, I've definitely noticed better aspects of my crosshair placement and decision making, but I was in a higher elo at this point. So what the hell's going on? Also, again like Siege, a lot of the resources for improvement kinda suck. Tens explains why hold... Oh, fuck. Shit. Write it down, write it down.
Kind of like Call of Duty-ish. But the cool thing about hold is you're a lot more like in touch with your op. I don't know how to explain it, but I can I'm using upwards middle mouse to switch to the toggle zoom like this, and then I use the bottom one to jump. So basically, if I want to hold like an angle where I'm scoped in really hard, I just hit the up on my scroll wheel, and I can hold like a higher.
What? You might be in this category too. The long and short of it is that Riot wants you to work for your rank, and they want the shiny badge to mean something. The rank distribution, statistically, has gone through many adjustments, deliberately by Riot, to reflect something of a standard bell curve. Here's what it looked like in October of 2021. Yeah, that's not supposed to happen. As this article states, over 60% of players in this distribution are in the bottom 3 ranked brackets, despite there being 4 ranked brackets in this chart. That's not supposed to happen. Here's what they are trying to achieve instead. Looks a lot more representative of how these ranks should categorize the population of players, right? I think that the fixation on rank has more to do with the culture of competitive gaming and the desire for bragging rights. People don't like to be belittled, and they want their time and effort invested in something to mean something. To some people, it might feel like they've been eating free chicken breasts a day and lifting every day only for their metabolism to undergo a caloric reset and make them unable to lift the same lifts they were doing before overnight. That would, 1, feel very Matrixy and fever dreamish, and also frustrating and demoralizing. You don't feel like your individual ability has changed, but whatever happened in your placement seems to have punished you for making just a couple more mistakes than your opponent. The circumstances are further compounded by the culture of these games, where anything that isn't the absolute top rank is considered dog shit or ass, which is obviously, on an empirical basis, ridiculous, because these black and white labels aren't helpful for diagnosing the issues you're facing while learning a game. If you can reliably hit within the 50th percentile of a rank distribution, that is considered average. Yes, average. You know, that thing that everybody is at something in life. That's normal. Your competition at these inflated Immortal and Radiant ranks are people who play a lot more than you, watch a lot more streams than you, maybe even do deliberate aim exercises like the drills I'm doing here. Radiant is the home to many people who play Valorant for a living, and it takes a significant amount of time to get to this point. When I was playing Siege regularly, I'd go back and forth between Plat 2 and Plat 3 at my peak MMR. That was combining time making videos, having a social life, and also just playing the game for content. I wasn't playing on a team, and I wasn't trying to compete or try out for one. Despite this being within the top 20 to 15% of the player distribution, I'd still get flamed on occasion. Because I'd have one part of the season where I was like on a losing streak in Gold 1, and then I'd be, quote, you know, giving people shitty advice in my videos because I was in Gold for like a week. The fact that I was ever Gold. You couldn't go Gold once. Bad. Of course, the information in the videos was irrelevant. The clips and context of the information was irrelevant. The only thing that mattered to these people was the magic number. These people will never be satisfied. You could hit Radiant tomorrow, and they call you boosted. Your magic number is just a mathematical estimate of your likelihood to win a game versus another player. It doesn't reflect a certainty of that outcome. And there are too many things to consider because, ultimately, Valorant is a team-based game. Individual assessments of skill in team-based games are always going to be tricky to pin down. In short, is it your fault that you're at the rank you're at? Now, recognizing that is not an indictment because it's also the fault of the 4 teammates that you had over the course of the games that got you in that rank. I think it's important to contextualize this because if you're worried about ranking up, it's important to understand the gaps in your team and try to play around them the best that you can. If you're wholly fixated on just your individual performance, then you're not going to play in a way that's going to benefit your team as much. And even then, it can still get more complicated than that. Good example from traditional sports that don't involve a mouse and keyboard. Former Detroit Lions quarterback Matt Stafford, or as some people like to call him, Stat Padford. A snarky nickname he was given by people who thought that he was also partially to blame for his team's crappy record. Stafford's quote-unquote elo, in a metaphorical sense, was low, as he was constantly stuck in situations with ineffective defenses and bad lines to protect him with. If we looked at Matt Stafford's win-loss ratio, and that's kind of what elo really is just a really complicated win-loss ratio, it wouldn't take into consideration his average yards per game, completion rate, touchdowns, etc. We'd call Matt Stafford ass because he was in, quote, silver football elo. Put Matt on a decent team, and now he's going to the superb owl. Likewise, Tom Brady is radiant, and considered by many to be the best radiant of all time, in part to the fact that he was on the New England Patriots for the overwhelming majority of his career, and the stacked Tampa Bay Buccaneers for his last ring. Whoa, easy, Tiger. I'm not taking away from Brady's credit. I'm just comparing Matt's team environment to Tom's team environment. And one of them was definitely better than the other one. I'm not saying he didn't deserve his quote-unquote radiant rank, or that he was quote-unquote boosted, because if he was boosted, he wouldn't have been able to compete at that level. He obviously had the career he had because he was a phenomenal quarterback. But I don't think Tom would have been able to make Detroit a competitive team, because that organization had too many systematic problems that were removed from his control. When you make the mistake of comparing your silver circumstances to people in Immortal or Radiant, who have hundreds of hours combined with the members of their stack, to the point where they can play off of each other, to the point where their team chemistry is better, to the point where their comms are more efficient, they have longer memories and improvisational skills due to seeing more circumstances thrown at them, you're putting your occasional 2 to 3 hours of Val after work or school next to people who often play the game for 8 hours a day. No, I'm not exaggerating. If you find yourself limiting your social life, your gym habits, other aspects of your life that bring you comfort for the sake of a magic number, you're already doing it wrong, because you're going to be cracked at Valorant and miserable while doing so. I think the whole mantra of, you deserve this elo. If you weren't ass, you'd climb out. That's a little bit reductive because it just assumes that everyone who gets bad placement matches should just quit and not put in the effort to get out of that rank. At the end of the day, only you can figure out ultimately what you need to improve on, and most importantly, how. So it doesn't make sense to beat yourself up because you had a big rank crush this episode, because you weren't the only person to get hit by a big rank crush this episode. You're also going to be playing in silver, bronze, or gold games with the same people who got hit by it. So obviously, those games are going to feel like the plat games that you were in, even though the magic number is lower. So just focus on you, and don't let a magic number determine your enjoyment of the game. I'm not saying to be a robot or a monk and be emotionless when you lose, or if you whiff, or you realize that you could have done something to make the game turn out differently. But if it genuinely ruins your night, that might be indicative of something else going on. If I've had a bad night of ranked games, I go to the gym, and then I instantly feel better. I don't have the answer for you. It could be more aim lab, it could be VOD review, but I think it's important to not let your head get to that shitty mental state. Just focus on what you can do, and embrace the suck a little bit. These are all things I told myself when I tried to make my first push for Plat 2 a couple of years back in Siege, and if it makes you feel better, I didn't even do anything too crazy to win that first Plat 2 game. This was the biggest play I made.
Skylight? Yellow?
So keep your head up, Kings. I believe in you. Good luck. Deuces.